Joining me today is Charlene Lovett, who's running for mayor of Claremont. So Charlene, we were talking about sort of your history and kind of in Claremont and some of the key issues, and obviously tax rate and revenue for the city is one of them. But we talked about partnerships. You used that as like the Amtrak station as one example. As you look forward, what are other key items that you think the next mayor, the council, and the city really need to explore?
Well, according to the charter, the ordinances that we have on the books have to be reviewed every 5 years, and we are way behind on that. So one of the things that I would like to do is put together a policy committee and just get that job done, because it's only right that the ordinances that we have on the books are things that we can enforce, that should be enforced, and are relevant to the needs of the people today.
And so every 5 years, every ordinance is supposed to be re-examined?
Yes, reviewed.
And I suspect, I don't know if that rule is in other cities and towns, but I suspect if it is, that isn't done every 5 years in most places.
I can't speak for other places, but I do know, having done this before in other organizations, it's not the job that most people run to. Well, it has to be done, but we've had a lot of communication with people that live in the community, talking about issues that could easily be resolved if our ordinances are up to date, and so we can enforce them.
What are the issues that you hear people talking about that are aligned with out-of-date ordinances?
Well, we are having currently an issue with residents in the community raising animals, small type animals, and you think of it more as a farm, but they're raising chickens and rabbits and sometimes ducks and other things. And our ordinances aren't, we don't even have one that applies to that. We have an ordinance that applies to cats and dogs, but not to other small type farm animals.
So basically in Claremont, you could have a backyard farm with 100 chickens.
We wouldn't want that, but right now, there's nothing on the books that talks about it, and that's one of the issues.
The law is silent to that.
Right, and so that's one of the issues that the council is working on.
And I guess it's probably better to be proactive in that than sort of wait till the problem happens.
Well, if you're a resident that's living next to some of these operations, they would rather have us be proactive because they're dealing with some issues that aren't very pleasant.
So are there other examples of little things that, from my history, I know one of the cities I lived was against the law for men to make Google eyes at women in public. And it was from the 1800s.
Well, it's still legal in the city of Claremont to ride on your horse and smoke in the parks, but
it is.
As long as you're riding on your horse.
So if you're on your horse, you can smoke in the parks.
I think so, yes.
Okay. Yeah. So that's what I was just curious if there's some of these sort of anachronistic laws.
Yeah, they're completely out of date. And the reason why I bring up the smoking is because last year that was one of the ordinances that we reviewed, because it wasn't being addressed as far as people's complaints, people smoking in the parks. It makes it kind of unpleasant sometimes. So we addressed that issue. We had a public hearing. People came to testify as to their thoughts on the process, and so we came to a compromise position. So now we have an ordinance on the books that deals with smoking in the parks, and when that can occur, and when it can occur, and where it can occur. So by doing that, as you can see, you're meeting the needs of the people better. What we're going to be discussing on Wednesday is curfew. We have some things on the books about, I think the curfew is at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and the whistle has to blow, and well, the whistle doesn't even work anymore in Claremont. So these are all examples. You're not going to, resolve the bigger issues by doing this, but it's something that has to be done.
In 2 years, you're elected a mayor. What's the one thing you would like to have gotten accomplished?
The one thing, huh?
If you could say, I did this is...
Given that economic development is so critical to the health of this community, I think it is very, very important that we, right out from the gate, starting in January, we look and identify what our goals and objectives are to really achieving economic development. I mean, it's too broad of a term. You're never going to get where you want to be if you don't have a roadmap. And if you have to identify the goals, the objectives, and a timeline on when you're going to measure your success.
So would it be getting the goals, getting the objectives, and the timeline? Is that?
As when you check in to measure your progress, because if you're not progressing, there's got to be a reason why, and how can you adjust what you're doing to achieve these success that you want to achieve in the end.
Well, and speaking of the end, we're out of time here. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining us for this edition of Capital Connections, your weekly access to politics and policy along the I-89 and I-91 corridors and how it impacts our region. If you have a comment or an idea for a future show, please email me. And please join us again at the same time next week for another edition of Capital Connections.